Ha. I have the power to start recording. This is the Wednesday, November 20th core team meeting. And the first item on the agenda is the team-wide stand-up meeting guidelines. Florian.
No movement.
Next is stage design, RFCs, whatever we call it. Nico.
So I drafted some language there for a proposal on how the Lang team might manage RFCs, which marks a pretty big shift from how we've done it so far. I haven't really had time to follow up on that. I floated it in Zulip, gotten some feedback from a few folks, including Steve Klabenik, who's not here, and a few others. But I haven't tried to really promote this or get a lot of discussion, but I would like to get started on that at some point. The gist of it being that instead of trying to move the RFC repo to reflect exactly those RFCs where the Lang team is actively engaged and no others, and to say that you don't just open RFCs point blank. You don't open a PR on the RFC repo. You create a lightweight issue on a different repo that indicates I have a proposal that I'd like to know if this is an area of interest. And we review those periodically and reach out and try, if we like something, we might say, okay, let's do it. Let's turn this into something. And in the meantime, there's a discussion thread on internals where discussion can continue. The goal is kind of to take the first step and introduce a sort of more formal version of the pre-RFC or stage 0, and in turn, hopefully, like I said, help keep the RFC repo to be more reflective of what our actual priorities are. But I plan to open this as a genuine RFC. I'd like to sort of start by writing some kind of blog post or something. Might try to do that soonish. But I'm happy to get feedback on it too. So take a look, ping me.
That reminds me, I had a long discussion with someone from TC39 at Rustfest, also around stage processes. I don't think there's a lot that we can take over, but maybe, just
I'd love to chat with you about it.
Bit of experience sharing.
Yeah, the goal here was explicitly not to try to make a whole. I don't want to do all the staging, all of it at once, but just focus on the initial stage of the pipeline to begin with. In part because I think the later ones are confusing.
I think one thing to be said to the group is TC39, for example, doesn't have a structured moderation process and moderation rules and all around that. And that was very interesting to me because for them, this is the job of the person who's driving the RFC. And I think ours, in that case, is a vastly better model. And I think it would also be good to work out the strengths of our current model and make sure that they get kind of formalized. Yeah,
I guess one other aspect I should add of this proposal, which is sort of not the main emphasis, but it's something I think will fall out, is that one of the ways, if a proposal that someone has, if it seems like a small idea, we can just move it to an RFC, but if it seems like a big idea, the idea is that when we review it, we would decide to form a project group around it, which would have a repo, which would have a Zulip stream, and would do some of the discussion in this format, as opposed to in an RFC thread that grows to 10,000 comments. So there is a kind of element, I don't think there's a formal staging, but for bigger things, I want us to get more interaction earlier. Anyway, I think that's probably enough on this bullet point for this meeting. I don't want to take the whole time, but.
Okay, the next is legal issues. I just noticed that Florian added the Rusty licensing guidelines, but it looks like it's been there for a while, but I don't know if I just missed it or if, Florian, you haven't been around to talk about it, but is there anything you want to say about that or licensing in general?
No, I had mentioned it the last time. I would be happy on feedback on that. It was the thing that I wrote down in a go and a second iteration. So also on practicality of applying it, or if there's more guidance needed on applying it. So Yeah, so this is in feedback state.
I missed that the first time. I'm wondering, is that something? It seems like the compiler team ought to be educated on this. I'm wondering if it makes sense. I don't know if you know about our design meeting processes, but we have a process where we propose meetings that I wonder if we should propose one on this topic.
I can totally do that. I would like to have this end up as a guideline that gives people clear guidance on if a pull request comes in that feels like it's, for example, ported, how do I deal with this? And what do I do if I don't feel competent to do it? I think that's the most important part, to not put the, I mean, in the end, the person who merges a pull request is in some way responsible and accountable, but making it clear, hey, if you are not sure, this is how you get security, and this is where you can talk to other people with more experience, like, for example, Josh or whatever. Like this, basically, this is the smells, and if it's not clear, this is how you proceed.
Yeah, I think this is great. I think we should do a meeting to let people review it and ask questions. I'm sure there will be people will have questions. And then I think we should try to we have this expertise map that we sort of underutilized, but I could imagine adding an entry for like licensing where we can put people in there to try to drive questions too.
Yes.
Thanks, Florian.
Okay, who is going to work on this meeting with the compiler team?
I can create the issue.
Okay.
Which is how you make a proposal. We have a scheduling meeting tomorrow. We'll probably schedule it for one of the upcoming weeks then. I'll sync up with Florian on that.
Next item is white papers. Anything in that area, Florian?
No.
Okay. Next item is the community subteam for the website.
The community subteam for the website. We've got someone who wants to form a subteam for the translation component. And the subteam for the website, we're still currently searching for a lead. It might end up, at least, the person who's currently most interested in the website is Pietro. Maybe we can talk to him, but he's also very entangled in the infrastructure. Yeah, that's it. If someone knows someone, please let me know.
So are there any next steps we can take there?
Yes, we could put out I wouldn't put it on the blog, but kind of a call. The website is, yeah, I would actually have no problem if we just put out, hey, if you're interested in working on the website productively, there's a couple of people now popping up, also trying to figure out if there's someone who actually has leadership qualities to do that and interest in leading on that.
Does anyone I feel like we've considered that before and didn't want to do that because we were concerned about who would respond to that sort of call and if they would take the website in a radically different direction.
It's still a process where Manish and me are the interim leads. So there would be a handover process, and I have no problem with, like, I'm still doing maintenance on it, and I'm merging the sponsors page and reviewing it and all that kind of stuff. I don't. It's basically the problem. If we put any signal out, it spreads very far and wide currently. I have no idea what the middle ground would be, and I would love to have a middle ground. If you understand what I mean.
I'm waiting because I saw Nico unmute himself.
I thought I had something useful to contribute, but I'm rethinking that. Yeah. I'm wondering if we're being unnecessarily cautious and if we should advertise and see who responds, but I don't know.
I definitely had a couple of people approach me recently with very reasonable requests on what to change on the website, and I wouldn't want that to go to waste. And one of these people has been Pedro, who asked on Rustfest a couple of technological questions. Can we change this? Can we change that? So I see more and more requests pop up that are, the website is okay, could be improved, which is a view I very much buy into. The reason why I want to not take that on as a lead is just because I think it's useful if the website had an independent lead that cares for it and has the bandwidth to do that. And because otherwise it tends to be a project that gets lowest priority over everything.
Okay, do we want to put out a call for contributors in general or leads in particular? And where should we do that call? And are there call for participants? And are there any objections to doing said call?
I have no objections to doing that call. Also, yeah, I would just make it clear there's going to be a handover process, and we can make it clear that the goal is to work with the website and improve the website and not take it away.
I think that makes sense. I would think that the Inside Rust blog might be a good place, but
there has been a pretty interesting comment that I've seen recently where someone said, if I wanted to contribute, I wouldn't even know what's currently where the current pain points are. So yeah, maybe that would be a good way to try out. Yeah. I would like to talk to Manish. I'll talk to Manish about this and come back to you.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I want to get it out of our hands, but I don't want to. It's not like I need to get rid of it quickly. So, yeah.
The website slogan modification. I see that. Sorry, go ahead.
Same thing. I think that would be a good first task for a team as a formative task.
It's somewhat dated now.
Yeah.
Do we still have to do it?
Then we should start doing it.
It seems like it's okay.
Could also be a fun thing over Christmas.
I think it's fine enough that we can take it off the agenda now.
I feel like we have bigger fish to fry.
Step up and volunteer. Yeah, exactly. But
okay.
I don't think we should be reminded every week anymore.
Yeah, sounds good.
Florian, I have a quick question. Is there any objection to publishing the link to that Rust licensing guidelines paper publicly?
If you put draft over it and like first draft, and then there's nothing in there which I wouldn't stand for.
Okay. Sorry, I should have asked that offline.
Roadmap planning, Nico.
No update. Other than there have been more posts. At least yesterday I went through and synced up seems like the tide has started to ebb, or I don't know if that's a good nautical metaphor, but there are fewer being published, and you could take a look at the paper deck. There's definitely some themes emerging, which people have started to collect at the top. I guess a good question would be, what we want to do as a process. Especially around other teams. The Link team has been trying to get ourselves organized, but we've been having some trouble to do a roadmap meeting where we talk about what we have in mind for the next year and if there are themes and so on. And it seems like Nick's post, for example, proposed different structures. Maybe we want to try to schedule a meeting to talk about it from the core team's point of view. I don't know. I would be up to try to create a doodle if we think that's useful. I don't know if we want to wait until there's some other, if we'd like to get more feedback from teams, then I think we should put it to the teams. Pretty clearly what we were hoping for, but.
Yeah, I feel like last year, like each team made their own roadmap.
Yeah, I think we kind of felt like that was not a very good structure.
Okay.
Because it was sort of very bullet listy, and I feel simultaneously like it was great that every team went through that exercise, and that wasn't like concatenating those into a roadmap didn't feel great. I would sort of, maybe we should just schedule a meeting, but I think it would be interesting to figure out what is most useful in a roadmap actually. Like to me, I found that the idea of themes is very useful, where I have to say, okay, the theme is stability or something, maturity, whatever it is. Now, of course, I can make a case for any given RFC for any given theme, but some cases feel better and stronger than others. And so like it's helpful to me to kind of decide if this feels like it fits that theme or not.
Well, I think on an RFC level, this is not that interesting, but I think for teams, it helps as a focus point. What is our broad story of this year and what would fit in there?
Right. I said RFC, but I really meant for any given like idea I would like to do. I can sort of, I don't know. Seems like it might be useful to try to pick a theme and try to come up with some concrete specifics, but those concrete specifics do require interaction with team, I feel like.
I think there's probably more than we can reasonably discuss in a triage meeting, and scheduling a core team meeting specifically to talk about this sometime shortly after December 1st seems like a good idea to me.
All right, I'll take an item to do that.
Cool.
So would this meeting be just core team or anyone on any team or team leads or?
I have a proposal. What if we use the leadership sync meeting? I don't know. Does that seem viable?
I feel like that's too big a group to have a very productive meeting rather than an update meeting. But I don't know. I was thinking maybe we want to have a core team meeting just to discuss all the blog posts that happened and whether we've noticed anything and how we want to structure the roadmap, etc. And then we can maybe have a wider meeting to kind of hash out the...
I think what I would propose is maybe a few of us, like maybe I'll send out an email and I will say, don't feel compelled to join. Because I think that if we have like, I don't know who's the best people, but it's probably self-selecting is fine. But if we have, 3 to 4 people or something, we all have more discussion.
Yeah. I think some ping pong with the teams would be best, because this is definitely something that we want to do to support the teams. And so asking the question, what would be most helpful to you to make you have a good roadmap and understand what the roadmap means. So making this a peer-to-peer instead of a top-to-bottom thing.
There's a sync meeting in this week and in 2 weeks. I could imagine trying to schedule something for early. I'm not going to be here next week as caveat. I'd like to take part, but early in December, and ideally we could have something to bring to the sync meeting and sort of advertise to people, hey, we're planning to talk about this at that point. Although I think that's not, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but like we can do it async too.
I feel like it might make sense to schedule one meeting that's like maybe just core and maybe even a subset of core. And then there we sort of try to decide on 3 or 4 like overarching big ideas. And then we bring it maybe to the lead meeting as like each team can figure out sort of bullet points or something that fit into those ideas. Because I think the
This was what I was
overarching
proposing.
ideas. Okay. I think that I understood it that way, but wasn't sure.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we could look for overarching ideas, bring it there and say, here's what we gathered. Do these feel like a good fit? Is there something missing? How would that apply to what you have in mind? Maybe even post to post, not totally crazy, sort of. But I like the idea of giving people some time to react before we have a real RFC. But okay, first step is we'll try to do that meeting, and I'll take that and send out the doodle after this call.
Okay. Next item is the Rust survey, Nico.
Okay, so I've been working with Jason Carr, and we have a draft that we're pretty happy with. We incorporated the feedback that people gave us from the email that went out, and there's been some back and forth. We have a Zulip stream, some like Mark's been on there, for example, and we're now getting the translations going. Our goal is to get the survey out soon as possible. I think most likely, I would have liked to have it out now, but most likely it's probably December 1st or 2nd, I guess, given the way the calendar works. There it is. It'll run for as long as we can run it, 2 or 3 weeks, pull it in and have some results early in the year. I think that's the most likely schedule.
Okay. Next item is the governance working group.
So I put some notes there. We had our first meeting. We're trying a renewed focus where we pick the topics for the meeting in advance and try to do some preparation and so on. And we had a meeting, we basically as a group read over the old teams, the RFC that proposed the teams, and tried to identify how accurate is this, what's missing, and came up with some interesting feedback. Oh, I don't have this. I took some notes and I don't have them in front of me. But one thing I wanted to run by, I'll say a couple things. First of all, there's a draft RFC, I have a link there, that's just proposing, sort of clarifying what the terminology. We don't really have any place and official decision about what a working group is. And specifically proposing that we use the term working group and project group for separating certain kinds of classifications. And we're looking to essentially try to produce documentation, which we also don't really have from what I can tell, apart from the RFCs, that will describe our governance structure. And for places where the RFCs, there don't seem to be RFCs, or we seem out of date, or what we said in the RFC just never happened, we might try to put some amendments to clarify that. So one example would be that the RFC states that the core team will approve all feature gates. This just doesn't happen. And that's okay. I think in general, the RFC kind of envisioned a more technical hands-on role for the core team. This is something I would actually like a little feedback on, but my impression is that what has happened instead is that the core team is focused on policy and cross-cutting to a certain extent, major shifts in direction like additions and so on, and not so much on individual features, which have largely been done by the teams themselves. And that's worked out for the most part pretty well. So that might be a place where we might tweak some of the language, but I wanted to both update you all and see what you all thought about this sort of as a direction to push on for a little while.
It sounds good to me. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, then with that, we are done with the open part of the meeting. Let me stop recording.
Yeah,
Unless